Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. There you go. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. I'm joined by a special guest. Well, everyone's a special guest, but I'm joined by someone I wanted on the podcast for about 3 years. Now, if you've been a listener, follower of me, you've seen that I had the 5-minute journal. I hype it up. It was my well-being tool. Well, Miss Lisa Nagorny is the one that gave it to me, so I'm going to give her an introduction. I don't do this very often. But, I'm just going to claps. Lisa is my cousin or cousin-in-law, but whatever. She's cousin. She's blood. We claim her. She was all-state in track. She ROTC scholarship at Duke, military veteran, Wharton Business School, doing big things, someone I really look up to. And I was like, well, you know what, Lisa? I need to have you on the podcast as someone about motivation, drive, all that stuff, but particularly about resilience. But before we get in this episode, Lisa, go ahead and introduce yourself to the listeners.
Hey.
There it is. I love it. Did I miss anything? Did I leave anything? Anything out?
Where do I start? Yeah, so Philip has been asking me for some time to join him in his podcast, which is just absolutely brilliant. And so I'm thrilled to be here with you, even though it's been a while. And I think that's because I'm a very private person in a way. And I have had a lot of different experiences along the way in my journey that have taught me a lot about resilience. And I think in talking about that and sharing those stories, it's tough, right? It puts you in a vulnerable place, and it's kind of opening up your life to others. And so I think it's taken me a bit of time to get here, but I am
You're here.
Just so happy to be here with you today.
Well, Lisa, that's literally about the topic we want to talk about is resilience. I know that, you're a very resilient person. Obviously, you're a model of resilience for me. And you wrote about it, you talk about it. But before we even get started, how do you define resilience? What does resilience mean? Just an anecdotal definition. What do you call resilient?
Yeah, I think for me, it's when you're facing something unexpected and challenging. When life throws you that curveball, right? And you're not going to be subject to that in a way, right? Like you're going to take control of what you can, and you're going to charge forward, and you're going to charge forward with a positive mindset. Mm-hmm. And not be a victim.
I love that. So, meaning you take the victim part, you don't say, why is this happening to me? You say more so like, this is happening to me. Now that I have it, what do I have agency over? Is that kind of what you mean by that?
Absolutely. And also, I think in my journey, it's also been, what am I going to learn from it? Or maybe throughout the process, reflecting on what am I going to take forward in my life?
Now, do you think that people are naturally strong, resilient people, or, like some are better than others? Or do you think that is something that, everyone is not good at, and they had to kind of grow and learn to get resilient?
Yeah, that's a great question. Maybe a little bit. I think maybe some of us have it more inside in part of our personalities than others. I think that doesn't mean we can't all learn around the way. And I think for sure, if I think about my own circumstances, and we can kind of get into that in a bit, but I've learned so much along the way. Each kind of curveball thrown at me, I've learned something new that I've been able to carry forward with me to then face another obstacle be in a stronger place, right? So I think we can get more resilient over time.
So I will go back. So you're an athlete and you're all these things. So let's go back to that when you're saying that, some people are naturally. When you were a kid, were you always like kind of like a mini resilient person? Were you the one that never complained and more so like it was hard, I'm gonna do it kind of thing? Like as a kid, do you ever think about that as a kid? Like you were just kind of mentally tough?
Yeah, I probably was more that personality type. And if I think about athletics, right, which was a really important part of my life, I was a competitive runner. And there was a couple years where I faced some challenges with injuries. And I definitely in that moment had the thought, you know what, I'm going to do what I can to get to where I want to be, right?
Okay.
And so I think about the time, my sophomore year, for example, in high school, I'd won a state championship in track.
Time out. First of all, you already won a state championship as a sophomore?
I did.
Okay, go. All right. I didn't know that. I knew that you did. I didn't know there was a sophomore. Jeez. Okay. So go ahead. So
yeah, I had all these big plans for myself, right?
Okay.
I wanted to run Division I and wanted to win multiple titles and things like that. And my junior year, that's a big recruiting year where colleges are looking at you and everything. And it was feeling pressure. I had a lot of expectations put on myself. And in track, early on, I wasn't feeling well. I wasn't running well. And it turned out I was really anemic. And the doctor said, I'm sorry, you just can't run. You need to sit out a chunk of the season. I thought, well, no, I can't do that.
Okay.
I have these plans. I'm supposed to, hit these goals and whatnot. And so I did. I took a step back. I ended up learning pole vaulting of all the things because I wanted to contribute to the team in some kind of way. And I was a former gymnast, and they had just allowed women to pole vault. And I thought that was pretty cool. So I thought, okay, I'll channel my energy into that and do something there. And then when it came to starting to run again, I thought, okay, well, I missed a bunch of the season. And instead of feeling down on myself, instead of feeling like, oh, what are the other competitors doing that I haven't been able to do and have anxiety about it, I just was super laser focused on what I could do from that point. And I was also focused on not criticizing myself and making myself feel bad for missing out on part of the season. It was from a very positive mindset, releasing some of the pressure I had put on myself, just saying, you know what, I'm going to try my best. I'm going to go out there every day and be present in my workouts, and I'm going to put my best foot forward, and whatever happens, happens. And that was a very different kind of mindset than I've had in the past. And in the end, I ended up getting second at states. I got a PR, or personal record, and it was probably one of the most satisfying races I had ever run.
So you channeled that. When you were going through these adversities, like now, transfer it later, I think resilience is kind of like they say that rubber band, right? Like you bounce back, and then now you know that you can stretch yourself a little bit. So did you ever take those lessons of that like track season and then apply it when you had an adversity in college, or do you ever go back and like say, okay, I can pull myself back to a past instance and say, I can use this now? Do you ever recall that kind of stuff, or
yeah, absolutely,
it's on to the next?
Yeah, I think what I learned there was to kind of stay in my lane, focus within myself, not beat myself up, right, and not place additional expectations on myself. And that's something I definitely carried forward in many different circumstances. And I think of particularly, I'm a breast cancer survivor. One of those curveballs that life threw me, very healthy person, no family history, right? And, when I got diagnosed, I just thought, why is this happening to me? It just was so unexpected. And I was angry, and I felt a lot of different things, emotions. I had a son. I was a single parent. Years prior, I had gone through a divorce, right? And I had just come out the other side, and everything was clicking into place in my life. And I just thought, no, this is not what is supposed to happen right now. Everything's going well. I have the breeze in my back, and been driving forward, and career and friends and family and life, and then the unexpected happens, right? And then it's like, well, how are you going to face that, right? You could say, get into a very dark place, which is very easy to do. I think one of the things I learned in that moment was it's also really good to let yourself feel things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not resilience doesn't mean you ignore your feelings and you just push beyond that immediately, right? But I think sitting with them, recognizing them, accepting them, and then it's like, okay, let's pick it up and what are we going to do next, right? And I think for me, it was that thought that I had years prior, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to be kind to myself. I'm going to say, what am I going to do next? What's in my control that I have influence over, right? In these circumstances, and then just take it day by day, step by step.
So agency is a really big one. The
agency is huge.
Agency.
Yeah.
Like
for me.
Do you feel like, because I believe you're a really resilient person, and so I look up to you about that. And then when you see other people that don't have that same mindset of agency, and I'll be transparent, I get really frustrated because I'm like, I'm not saying grass is always greener or be dismissive, but I'm like I almost want to shake people, like, you still got things in your control, right? Like, and the victim mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that is very difficult, when you're dealing with people with a different, I call it elasticity of resilience, that are not at a same, the rubber band feeling, like they don't bounce back as quick? Do you find that frustrating sometimes?
Maybe from a standpoint of, I just want the best for people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can see how, if you do have agency and you can change and shift your mindset, how powerful that can be, right? And wanting that for someone else. And, one of the ways that I've created that at other moments in my life was the 5-minute journal, which I shared with you, right?
Yeah.
So I found that and discovered it when I was going through my divorce. And it was a really amazing tool to help you focus in those little moments, and something, again, that I've carried with myself, through cancer, through COVID.
Yeah.
And I wrote an article about that as well, which you've seen. And I think that can be a tool for helping people shift their mindset and realizing, the power of the little things and decisions that you make day by day. And then when you look back after so many days have gone past, how powerful that can be.
Yeah. Now I was about to say, like, honestly, you saved my well-being. I don't know that you knew transparently I was going through a really dark anxiety, depression wave in 2017, 18. And I just remember you gave me that journal. And I wasn't, I was like, foo, whatever, this is weird. Like, Lisa's giving me this journal, but I said, okay, I'm going to use it. And, like, I used it. And honestly, some days when I look at it, like, it wasn't saying every day was sunshine. Like, sometimes I was saying this day still sucked, like, I was but then I like the macro view. When I look back at it, like 6 months, I was like, wow, it's a lot different space. So I don't know. I don't think you realize how powerful that was, just a little gift like that, but it really helped me. I'm like on 20 of these journals now. So
love that.
So with that, I think being a role model and whatnot, like, I know that you say you're a single mom with Hudson. I love him. Like, do you think now that you're trying, like, age appropriateness, like, how do you instill resilience in the next generation, but, like, not be so above their head, like mindset and all that in the cloud thoughts? Like, we're adults, we could talk all that. Like, how do we make it age appropriate for our kids?
Some of it to me is just modeling and bringing it into the conversation in different ways. Like, I think of conversations that I hear moms talk about or have had various points, and there can be this feeling that we have to show just such strength for our kids, which of course we want to do, right? But we're also human, and we're dealing with a lot of different things being thrown at us at any given time. Like, I think that one of the things I hear often from peers, 40 years old at this stage of life, is like, wow, life is tough, right? By the time you get to be 40, everyone has had different curveballs thrown at them, things that have happened that are unexpected, different challenges, juggling, competing priorities, right? And it's tough, right? And so I think in an age-appropriate way, sharing a bit about that, sharing a window into that world with our kids is not a bad thing.
Just not full tilt, open the window.
Yeah, maybe not the whole view.
Yeah, the whole view. Okay, gotcha.
And, one of the things, Maggie, your wife, who, like I've talked to and gotten counsel from and guidance when it comes to Hudson, just incredible counselor. And I remember her telling me when Hudson was really young, and I was going through this divorce, and I thought, what can I do for him? Like I wanted to come from a place of positivity and agency, right? Like, okay, so like our life is going to be different than I thought, than I imagined, right? But like, what are some of the things that I can do to help him maybe navigate the emotional side of that, whatnot? And she talked about helping him articulate his feelings and sharing feelings. And so we got into this routine of doing that at the end of the day and sharing how our day was and how we felt about it from a young age, right? And that's kind of carried through to now. He's 8. And so I do share a little bit with him how my day is going, or what my fears are, or what might be bothering me, what has been amazing, what challenges I faced and I was nervous about and I overcame, and how that made me feel, right? And so he's really latched on to all of that and will use some of those words back to me, when he talks about his own life.
Well, let's talk about how you used it, because I remember we just shared a story earlier. I want you to share with the listeners, like how now we got Hudson, the motivational speaker, throwing stuff back at you. So can you share that story about? Because I think that is very powerful, how kids can just shape it and like flip it on you. But share that story.
Yeah. Well, so I think another powerful way to kind of instill this in kids is through stories. Something else, Maggie, your wife, had told me. And so we had just read a book called Never Give Up. And it was about this character through a variety of circumstances, never gave up. And here we find ourselves in an upstate New York. We were living in New York City at the time, in a corn maze, one of our favorite things to do in the fall. And I'm getting hungry. We've been at this corn maze for a while now. I'm frankly ready to give up. Like, let's just move on and get some apple cider donuts, And, he's like, well, Mommy, we can't give up. And so I went with it, and I was like, wow, and I was kind of over dramatizing some of it. And, we had this back and forth, and he's telling me how we need to not give up and and we made it through. And we celebrated that as a victory for not giving up, and, how much I learned from him and whatnot. And so he regularly reminds me that he was the one who had the idea about never giving up. And how he was able to motivate me, and how I wanted to throw in the towel early, and it was up to him. And so I think even this sense of kind of making them feel empowered in their own lives, and that they're imparting knowledge on us can be really special.
I think that makes them feel like they're the teacher. I love that. And that's why it was so funny. It was like, and then like next time when he wants to give up, you got to like use it on him. Like back and forth, like the Uno reverse card, and be like, remember when you told me not to give up? Now you can't give up, and just keep on going.
Yeah, so, and he regularly goes back to that moment. It just really stuck in his mind. Yeah,
and those are pivotal. I mean, I think that like think of early memories, but I think that's pivotal.
Yeah,
and you were talking about sharing a window, so like maybe particularly because you wrote an article about having COVID. I mean, not you having COVID, but COVID and having to move from New York. How what kind of discussion did you have? Like, did you flat out say like, Hudson, the world's going crazy with COVID, we got to do this? Like how much do you give them a window to tell them what's going on, so they feel like they know what's going on in their world, but at the same time you're like, be like, but everyone's dying. Oh
my goodness. And it's like, don't watch the news.
Don't watch the news. So how did you navigate that conversation at the beginning of COVID?
And I imagine it's different for every kid, right? Like, so my child is very curious, is in his head a lot. He will think deeply about things. And so I don't want him to be connecting dots that don't exist, or kind of filling in the wrong blanks. And so I'm very open with him about things. And so we left New York City right as things were accelerating. Mm-hmm. And we went and quarantined before we went down to be with my parents, to make sure that they were safe. And I told him, look, like, there is something going around. We don't know a lot about it.
Okay.
We're going to stay here so that we're safe. And at the time, I was in communication with some people who were in the nerve center of everything that was going on. And so, I said, there's a lot of uncertainty. We'll see how this goes, And I think every step of the way, it's knowing your child, I think, and then being able to share with them and give them the space to ask questions as well. Like I remember once we made it down to North Carolina, we had this evening where we were just kind of sitting quietly. And I asked him, what questions do you have for me? So we just moved down here. Your dad's still in New York City. You know something that is going on. You know, we're safe here. And it was just like the floodgates opened. He had all sorts of different questions, like various questions about
like, do I have to go to school here? How long I go to school? Could someone else go to school with me? Like kind of things like that.
At the time, I think it was more about the actual disease or virus, like what is COVID, right?
Oh man,
and understanding how it's transmitted and things like that, and and a little bit about, well, how long are we going to be here or whatnot. But I did tell him, I said, look, like if this is going to last a while, we'll be here a while, but we're family, we'll be together. You know, your dad will come as soon as he can. And I think sharing some of the unknowns also wasn't a bad thing. But he's a kid that needs that, right?
Yeah.
To feel part of it and to feel secure in a sense, right? Other kids, maybe that gives them more anxiety. I know.
I mean, I don't know about anxiety or not. I think your kids are just more, your son is more attuned. My kids are like, what? Like, huh? Like, they kind of like just knuckleheads like me. So I think they just wanted to know enough, like,
yeah.
Do I get to
He's
hang
like,
out?
what's our plan for the year, Mom?
Yeah, your plan and itinerary. Mine are like, do we get to see my cousins or do we get to hang? Like, they're all like, just like, do we get to play? Like, they're not as cerebral. But no, actually, let me take that back. Bennett is very cerebral randomly though. Like, I don't, and his questions don't connect dots. His would be like, oh, COVID. Do you think dinosaurs had COVID? I'm like, what? Like,
oh no, he asked Hudson asked, like, do birds get COVID?
Okay.
Or like, if I'm seeing the ducks in the lawn, do they have COVID? Are they going to give COVID to
okay,
me? Yeah.
okay, then all right.
Yeah.
Then, that's why Bennett and him vibe then, because he'd be asking like that made no sense.
Yes, that's why they're like brothers.
Yeah, they're like brothers. Okay, so that does make sense. So now you have these conversations, you're modeling it, and you're doing a great job for someone else. But what about for you? You know, like in a sense, and flipping it, who are people that you know, mentorship, guidance? Who are those people? Like, wow, I look at that person for how to be resilient. You know, that's the person you know, like that I had those dialogues with. Do you have any examples like that?
Yeah, I think so many different people in my life in various ways. And one of the things I learned going through my divorce is it changed my idea of family and friends in a way, and really created a different network around me, like a bigger family, right, than I had. And I think building those relationships along the way in that part of my life, and learning about other people's challenges along the way and having conversations about that, you kind of learn together, you know? And so I think there was a lot of learning together.
Like peer, like you said, resilience-wise, like you had a community, so it's like sometimes the peers, your peers were very helpful, your friends were very helpful in teaching you resilience.
Yeah, I'd say it was more probably from peers than maybe a mentor, right? And I think having different sounding boards, having people go through things in their life and sharing that and reflecting on that and talking through it.
So obviously you just said you're a breast cancer survivor. So did you believe that like you had separate people, like these are the people I talk about my cancer stuff with, you know, like I keep that to the, not keep it like isolated, but, you know, because you share with Maggie and your friends the intersections of that. But did you have like, this is my core, you know, cancer people, you know, I talk to cancer about, is this my core divorced people? This is my core single working mom. Did you feel like you have like different, like, I guess categories? Because I would say for me, I do, you know, like in regards to mentors or whatever, you know, I got my frat brothers, and then I got black men to talk about like being a father. And then I got like professionals, you know, I don't know. I just lump you in lots of things. I just ask you random stuff, but I got like, you know, different pockets, and I keep them. I mean, sometimes my issues about being a dad still goes into one of my female mentors. You know, I still talk about being a father, but more particularly as a female mentor, she was more like my professional person. Shout out to Samara. Like I ask her about professional questions, like how do I, you know, advocate for myself in this job. So do you feel like you have categories and pockets?
Not so much for me. I think is this support community and extended family that I built over time, and that maybe I'll go to certain people as certain things come up, but I think in general for me it's this feeling of this extended family, an extended network. And I'd say maybe one exception was being a single parent, because I found that was actually really hard to find other single parents, other
Really?
women that were ambitious in their careers and juggling everything and making it work. And I found that through the Wharton Club of New York, and ended up joining the single parent network and joining as a co-chair at one point. And that was really great, where we were able to bring together a community of single parents to kind of talk through some of those and how we juggle everything.
So it was your Wharton Business School alumnus, right? The Wharton group had a subsection for working parents, and then was it
for single parents?
Single parents, and then was it as single parents as in single fathers and mothers?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And they were just doing it, and so the variety, they all weren't divorced. It could have been widowers or widows and all that. Like
absolutely,
single parents.
Yeah. But I think that was the hardest community. I mean, it took me a while to find that community. I think with being a veteran, close friends that I served with, right, and women from college and business school that are moms and juggling everything, right. But I think it was the situation of feeling, as a single parent, sometimes it's just on you, and it's a different dynamic and kind of a different balancing act, and wanting a community and a sounding board, people that kind of had a deep understanding of what that's like, right? And so I was able to find that, and I think that speaks to me, like, if you're not getting something from your network, of your community that you've built around you, being curious and going out and seeing, what are different communities out there that you can tap into?
Yeah, I like
maybe
that.
Create.
That's about to say, like, I always say, if there is no space for you, make a space.
Yeah,
and like,
absolutely.
Like with technology, just at this point, you could just say start a group and then just invite a bunch of people and see who comes, and then you have a group. Like, and I love that. So, do you think now, with that being said, so you think resilience is a team effort or a single effort?
Yeah, I think it's both in a way, right?
Okay. Yes, and.
Yes, and.
Yeah. And how so?
Answer to a lot of things. Yes, and.
No, it's all good. Can you explain that one then? Because I kind of agree.
Yeah, I'd say, it starts within.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's your journey. You're the one facing the challenge, right? And maybe other people with you, depending on the circumstance. But I think it's individual in that, again, facing into it, taking the learnings forward, navigating that yourself and what that means to you very personally, and being very introspective about it. But then also a team effort in that, when I think about when it was easier, it's when I was supported by others, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't just myself. But I was still looking within myself, right? I wasn't just making it about other people and assuming, like, they're the ones that are going to get me through it, right? Yeah. It's a team effort in that way, in that respect, in that it's people around you and yourself. But
and can I agree? I take it another step further. What I'm thinking too is, like, yes, the agency, what I have a control over and all that individually, but then after, like, specifically as you become resilient, I feel like you sometimes have a responsibility, like almost like spider sense, when you see almost someone else going to go through the same thing that you went through, that you help them.
Totally. So paying it forward.
Yeah, but it's like, oh man, like, I know what that felt like. So, like, you're talking about being vulnerable, but, like, say now when I went through, a very depressive and, anxiety provoking time, I can almost call it on other people, like, oh, that person's about to go. And then I almost like, here's some things that work for me. Or do you need some help? Like, it's almost like I don't, because, like, almost like through that, like, yes, you're stronger, but you just don't, it didn't feel good going through a bad circumstance. Yeah. So you don't want other people to feel that way.
Totally. I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
And I mean, to kind of go back to one of your first questions around how I was as a kid, right? Like, I felt like I had to be tough, like, I came from a place internally where I had to push myself to the limit. Like I didn't want to show weakness, and I learned along the way that actually opening up yourself to others and sharing your vulnerability, right? And when you're dealing with adversity, yes, like there is part of that that's on you, as I mentioned, where you're looking inside yourself and kind of pushing forward, but letting others into that as part of your team, how powerful that is, and the relationships you built from that, and sharing the load, like that makes it so much easier, right? And I think when I see people trying to carry it all on themselves, being able to share that with them, to let them see that it doesn't have to be just them, right? And that sharing what you're going through isn't a sign of weakness. It doesn't mean you're less than, It doesn't mean people are going to criticize you or think badly of you, right?
And also, like I said too, like I think there's still, I keep on coming back to the word agency though. Like like you still, it's not, you still can do things. So like let's talk about the doing things. So what are some things as you've navigated besides the 5-minute journal, because they don't sponsor me. We about to say their name like 20 times. What are some other things you do day to day to like keep yourself in check? And I know some things you're gonna say, but I want to hear from you.
What do you think? What do you think?
You run.
Say?
You run still.
Oh, yeah.
You still run. My fat ass don't run, but I wouldn't. I used to like lifting weights, and that used to be my. But what are some other things that you like to do? Running, and what are some other things that or your well-being things to do for yourself?
Yeah.
But not only well-being. I think well-being is technically building up your resilience muscle.
Totally. Yes.
So you
right?
gotta take care of yourself so you can be ready.
So true.
So you can be ready. So what are some other things you do for yourself?
We didn't really talk about, but I think having that strong foundation, it gives you more of a springboard, to address kind of the adversity that might come your way. I think for me, the physical element is huge, being physically active, right? I just feel so much better in so many different ways. And so knowing that I need to make time for that, even though it can be really hard, and I don't always make time for it. And when those periods of time accumulate, that I'm like, oh, I really need to kind of get back, So it's not saying I'm far from perfect on that, and I think it's hard to be. And so I think it's more just checking in with yourself and realizing, hey, I need this more in my life. It's the balance is tilted too much the other way. And so I need to introduce that in some kind of way and trying to be intentional about making space for it. The other thing for me is being outside, which can be somewhat related, somewhat not, but being in nature. And I think of the moments where, I'm skiing or I'm running along the lake in Chicago where I now live, right? And it's the combination of those things that I think can be quite powerful for me in being meditative in a way, being regenerative, energizing. And, some people, yoga or meditation works to help clear their mind and kind of create a clean slate. I have not been one to be able to do that. I just can't sit still.
No, me neither.
I have too much going on in my mind. And so, so I find for me, I've always been this adventure sports junkie. And I think one of the reasons why, besides just loving sports, is just this intense focus that it makes you, when you're rock climbing or you're skiing something hard, it requires you to really laser focus. And for me, that's meditative
good enough
and
for
relaxing.
Me.
So,
that's good enough for me.
So there is, I think it's just, checking in with yourself and figuring out what is it that I need, right? That puts me in that place where I'm feeling ready to go and I'm energized and I'm moving towards my best self.
Well, I got one more question and then we go to our last segment. So I know you wrote that article. Do you find like writing is a therapeutic thing for you? The article, the one that you wrote about resilience, that's why I wanted to talk to you about it. And, do you continue to rant? You got another, writing in the queue? Do you got another article in the queue?
I don't know. Maybe I should. I haven't typically I think back, years ago, I had a blog for veterans around veterans' career transition. And I really loved that. I really did love writing about that topic. I had people reach out to me that were looking for advice and counsel. As veterans were transitioning into the workplace, and at the time, there's very high veteran unemployment rate. And that's what I was writing about. And so I love the fact that I could bring awareness to that issue and bring thinking around tangible steps that veterans could take, as it relates to numerous challenges around that. And then the people that reached out to me, I love that. I felt that was very fulfilling. And I hadn't shared anything personally until during lockdown. My firm, we started this tradition where every day someone would share a thought of the day, and then you would pass the baton to someone else in the office to share their thought of the day. And it could be anything. It could be your latest Amazon order, or it could be, your view on something. There was no parameters around it. It's just, what did you want to share with everyone?
And it could be like one paragraph. It could be like a full article.
Yeah, it could be one paragraph. There's no parameters at all, right? All right? It was in the middle of COVID lockdown. And the baton was passed to me. And I thought, oh shit, what are we going to write about?
Yeah.
Am I allowed to say that? I don't know.
Yeah.
And people over time became very vulnerable and shared their stories and shared their views on various things. And it was just so inspiring and humbling in so many different ways. And, I thought, okay, if other people can do this, I can do it.
Your turn.
And yeah, because I went through breast cancer and I did not share that in my workplace. I felt like I wanted to control my narrative. I felt like maybe I just wanted to keep on and kind of ignore the fact that I was sick. There's a lot of probably factors at play. A few people knew, of course. I did cold capping, which is kind of this crazy invention where you're freezing your head so your hair doesn't fall off.
I remember seeing that too. I remember seeing that. I mean, I guess you didn't hide it from the Wilkersons.
No, and I have so much hair. So I did lose a bunch of hair, but it was enough to disguise it. Where some people were like, "Oh, you kind of look different," but couldn't put their finger on it. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to share my story.
Yeah.
And then share my journey down to North Carolina and how, amidst all this kind of COVID craziness, I've been focusing on those little moments, those things that I control, and trying to make these silver linings moments around kind of a very kind of stressful time. And so that's what I wrote about.
I think I still bookmark it and I still come back to it. It's like I actually bookmarked it in my Google, so I read it every now and then, and I definitely share it with my friends, and it was like that definitely was just like a very Lisa article. And what I mean by that, I was like, oh shit, here she is, she's the resilient queen again. Like I feel like I'm like your little brother that looks up to older sister. So I was like, wow, I'm glad you did share that, because I think a lot of people. It's almost like seeing, like you weren't even knocked off a pedestal, but just seeing the humanization of you was very helpful. And I liked reading it, so I still read it every now and then. All right, so shot for shot, you get to ask me any random question, not even related to this. I get to ask you one, and then we can call it a day. So you want to go first? I'll go first.
Wow, on the spot.
Yeah,
right, how about
shot for shot? That's why it's called shot for shot.
How about you go first?
All right, I already thought about this one all day.
I feel like that's not fair.
It is. It's not, because I know you're going to be my guest. Okay, so here it is. This is it. It's a real thoughtful question, though. So you get to have dinner with anyone, dead or alive. So it's like a multiple choice one. Who are you having dinner with? Why are you having dinner with them? And where are you going to eat? So that's your question. Like anyone, dead or alive, why and where are you going to eat? There, that's my question.
Oh.
And, kind of like why is like you ask them at the dinner table. Like you get older, you get to ask them any question while you're eating food.
Wow, I feel like I can take these maybe in a reverse order.
Yeah, go ahead, whatever order.
I think maybe I'd be in New York.
Okay, so New York. What kind of place to eat?
There was this place that I just loved. I would go with Hudson. We'd go on Fridays. And it's not open anymore. But in this imaginary magic wand scenario, it's open, right? Pizzeria Serenetta.
Okay, so it's pizza. All right.
Yeah.
So you're eating pizza, New York style pizza. So you're taking a good person. Who you?
Yeah, a good glass of wine.
Okay.
Great
So
salad.
So you got some wine. So who you taking?
Good ambiance. Man, it's only one person.
Well, I mean, just for this dream scenario, maybe. Okay, how about the first person?
And you said dead or alive.
Dead or alive. So they come back from the dead, but they wouldn't be like a zombie. They look like a normal person. I don't think that'd be really fun to keep with it.
Well, if Hudson's with me, he wants to meet Elon Musk.
There it is. Okay. So you can add that caveat.
Because he wants to be an engineer.
Okay.
He's already asked me
So
that.
you're bringing Hudson to this dinner, which is totally allowable. This is your dinner. So you're bringing Hudson, and are you just going to let him ask all the questions?
I don't know if I would be able to ask any questions. I would ask them all.
Okay. So that shows like selflessness. So you're going to invite someone, not for you. You're going to invite it for Hudson. You're going to set up the scenario while you eat this pizza and wine and let him talk.
Yeah, that sounds pretty great.
Sound perfect answer. I think that's the first time I ever heard someone say for someone for dinner, they thought of someone else for dinner. So that's a great one. That was actually really good. I was really impressed. That was a good out too.
Well, he recently asked me about this. So.
Ask Elon Musk why he's taking Twitter and buying it. Well, he didn't buy it. I think they blocked that deal, or why he got rockets. That'd be cool. All right, your question for me.
What advice do you have for me?
Dang, advice for you. Mm-hmm. Well, I was about to
say.
All
right, kids.
Okay, I was about to say for you, it was supposed to be like, you need to get more hip.
That is true.
Listen some more.
Philip has been giving.
My advice for you is that you need to just spend a day at college, just learn some of these slang, and get up on what's going on. Okay. Well, I think advice for you, though, I think advice is that don't minimize that voice that you have. Like, obviously, it took me forever to get you on here. That's because I I believe that you have a lot of great insights and things to share, both orally, spoken, and in written word. So my advice to you would to hone in on that and continue to do that and share it with whatever comfort level you want, but continuously do it, whether it's writing more and sharing more ideas in writing or being a guest on my podcast again.
Yes, maybe we should do another one.
Do another one again. But that would be my advice to you, is share some of this tea, some of this knowledge that you have, because unofficially, without any of this media, you influence a lot of people. And so I know that if you had the edit layer of the writing or this, you would influence so many people because you do it to me. So that would be my advice. And for the kids, listen to your parents. I don't know. Especially my kids. Listen to me. That's my advice, because they don't listen. I don't know. I would say this too. I think that as I've gotten older and seen the other lens, I've gotten a lot more empathy for my parents.
Yeah,
I'm like,
so true, right?
Man, like my dad wasn't really grumpy because he was just mean. He was tired.
It's so true. Sometimes you don't learn until you're experiencing it yourself, right?
So I gotta give my dad a lot of grace. And I'm like, oh man, like being a parent, he was burnt. That's why he was working. Definitely just wanted to be left alone. Like I get it now. So shout out to all the parents out there. As you become parents, just randomly say you're sorry to your parents.
Yes.
That's my
As
advice
we're recording this after a day at 8 hours at the water park.
We spent, for those that are listening, we spent literally a work day, 10 to 5 p.m. at a water park, and my kids' batteries were still going. I was burnt. Like, I was tired, and they were still going. So, shout out to the youth. I got it right now. So that's been great, Lisa. This has actually filled me up. It's called a bucket filler. Into this show, it's called Shout Outs and Plugs. Show love to anyone you want to show love to. Name drop, whatever you want to do. And then plugs. Anything that you want the listeners to know, you're listening, or if they want to follow you, say, don't follow me, whatever. Some people say, I remember I did a shout outs and plugs with my friend. He was like, don't find me, I'll find you. I was like, all right, great, good enough. So shout outs and plugs.
Well, I think my shout out, you asked around who are your mentors or the people that you're there for you, right? And, my family, of course, you and Maggie and others. But also this group of girls, we call ourselves the Brain Trust in a way, because
like
we
that.
have this group text, and it's amazing what questions, we're grappling with, and we throw it out to the group, and you just have no judgment, right? Just full support there with you every step of the way. They've been with me through so many different challenges, and in some really like tough times. And so I want to shout out to them.
Gang.
Yeah.
The most of them like from college or Brain Trust sounds pretty nerdy. Seems like a Duke, seems like a Duke thing. Like a Duke thing. The smart Duke kids. Is that where you met them, or they're all over the world?
They were my business school.
They're Wharton people. So even more brainy. Shout out to them. Shout out to intelligence. And then anything you want the listeners to know about what you're doing? No.
I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know.
I'm gonna put the link to the article. There it is. That's your shot. That's
that
your
would be
plug.
great.
That's the plug. I'm plugging the article.
I'm realizing now maybe I need to restart my veterans blog, and then I can come back on and
well, I mean, okay.
give a plug for that.
One, we need to talk about veterans, but that'll be a separate episode.
Yeah, we should have a
And two, as someone that works in higher ed at Mason, which is a heavily military, just the DMV in general, is military. I think there's a lot of help that could be there. So let's plug it. We'll talk about that offline, but that definitely is something I know a lot of people in that space can use some help. All right. Well, Lisa, this has been great. This is, totally worth all this. This made me so happy to have you on here. I look up to you. As I said earlier, you're a resilience role model, which is like a RR. So that's cool. Resilience RR. R&R. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And Positive Philter listeners, if you like this episode, share it with your family member or friend, or you can call the hotline, which 571-336-6560. That's 571-336-6560. Like, subscribe, share this with your friend. Sharing positivity is a movement, and we're out. Thank you for listening to Positive Philter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity a Movement. Thanks for listening.